Well, okay. Let's keep moving through here and talking about the executive branch. Okay. Well, yesterday I finished off. We did the cabinet positions, and then these positions that you'll want to know some of these for the test, like in a fill in the blank situation up in here. Okay. Countless other federal that you don't need to know. Like, so I have a bunch there. Here, Office of Policy Development, National Space Council, Office of U.S. Trade, National Critical Material Councils, the Office of Science and Technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 3 million employees in the federal government. Now, when we look at the powers of the president, we look at these in different ways, but when we look at the constitutional powers, executive power, I think I did this one at the end yesterday again, and then you guys got to watch that little Saturday Night Live clip, okay, of the executive order, okay, which is a great video. I love that one. So again, this is that prosecutorial discretion. Their job is to carry out the law. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's at their own discretion. Yes? Yeah. As is the homework assignments for you to do. Those are at your discretion. Yes? All right. Now, the power to appoint, guys, this is simple. We already know this, right? We know the president appoints federal judges, ambassadors, cabinet members, heads of other federal agencies. Some of these, but not all of these, are appointed by the president. Okay, so the director of the FBI is appointed by the president. Director of the CIA. I'm not so sure, like with the Federal Trade Commission or the SEC, generally those tend to be more civil servants, like people that were hired for the job that served through multiple administrations, okay? Others have more turnover, like the FAA. Like, does Biden really care who the head of the Federal Aviation Administration is? It's not a political position. I guess you could turn it into one, but it doesn't. It's not necessarily political, okay? Either CIA, but it's the CIA. So you want your guy in there. You know what I mean? You don't want the other guy's guy in there, right? You don't know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. It's okay.
Yeah, like he was appointed by a Democrat. You're in office now. You're a Republican. This guy might not like Republicans, so I'm going to replace him with a Republican. Yeah. Okay. Now, so of course these things must be approved by
The Senate.
Senate. Okay. Diplomatic powers. Speaking of the Senate, treaties are official binding agreement with another country or other countries. Again, 2/3 by the Senate here with treaties. I did talk about executive agreements yesterday or the day before when I talked about remember how Bill Clinton loaned $20 billion to Mexico to help stabilize the currency. We talked about the Iran nuclear deal between Obama and the Iranian president. Okay, those are allowed. Okay, only binding while they're both in power. Now, this one I have not talked about is the power of diplomatic recognition. Okay, so we're going to get lost on this one, okay, for a while. So let me give you some examples. Is it legal to buy Cuban cigars in the United States? No, it's against the law. Can you buy them in Canada? Yes. Can you buy them in Mexico? Yes. If you transport them across the border, are you bringing illegal contraband into the United States? Yes. And that is a crime. Really? Okay. So why do we not trade with Cuba? Because what? Yes. Now we trade with Vietnam. They're communists too. They just call it. Kind of. And they're pretty oppressive. But economically, yes, more free market. Now, Cuba is a communist dictatorship 90 miles off the coast of the United States. Okay? And And so that means a little bit more to us than Vietnam across the other side of the planet, where you can get all kinds of cheap labor and trade, right? Am I right? It's about the Benjamins, right? Now, so Cuba, we don't trade with. And because we don't trade with Cuba, does that harm their economy? Yes, of course, because guys, we buy stuff. I think I said this the other day in class. We just hit an all-time record trade deficit with the rest of the world. $1.27 trillion that we import more than we export, which is the largest it's ever been. So if you do business with us, you do business with us. And we buy a lot of your stuff. And that's good for your country, yes? So you want your government to be recognized as legitimate by the United States. If we don't recognize your government as legitimate, do not give you diplomatic recognition, you don't trade with us, i.e. North Korea, i.e. Iran, i.e. Russia right now. Well, we recognize their government, but yeah, we're trying not to trade with them, okay? Now, I have China up here, okay? Now, China has a long history since the communists took over in 1949 of human rights abuses against its own people. We could talk about the Great Leap Forward. We could talk about the Cultural Revolution. We could talk about the Tiananmen Square massacre. We could talk about the treatment of the Uyghur people that are now being enslaved, doing slave labor. And some would consider acts of genocide by castration, ethnic cleansing, and so forth. Until the early 90s, every year, Congress would vote on what kind of trade status we would have with China. So China knew that the United States Congress, if they were upset about how the Chinese were abusing the human rights of their own people, we could put tariffs on their exports or refuse to trade with them at all because of the abuses. So we could kind of like hold that over the head of the Chinese and say, hey, you need to kind of like lighten up on your people a little bit here, or you're not getting the benefit of trading with the United States. Follow? So it's just, we could put some pressure on, economic pressure. Guys, in the mid-90s, President Clinton gave China permanent, most favored nation trade status. Now, I could pull up a chart simply by Googling it at the growth in the Chinese economy from 1995 forward. The Chinese government got most favored trade status. American companies took their jobs over to China. Other places in the world put their jobs over in China using cheap labor. And then we bought those products from them. And you watch the economic growth of China, their GDP growing at 6%, 8%, 10%, 12%. Huge cities just blossoming up out of the ground in China. You know, like we were doing in the early part of the century, the 20th century. You guys know what last quarter's growth was in the United States? This came out yesterday. 1.47% GDP growth. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to enter into a recession. This is not good. Now, the fact that most of you are going to college next year, hopefully it doesn't affect your family. Because in recessions, people lose their jobs. Hopefully you've got a plan for paying for school. You know, you can get through your 4 years or 5 years or 6 years or 12 years going in to be a doctor, okay, what have you. But when you get out, you're going to be looking for a job. Yes? If you're in a recession 4 years from now, you guys get out of college, it's hard to find a job. Because when I graduated from college, from the prestigious university known as Georgia Southwestern University, with a bachelor's in business and marketing, I moved to one of our biggest cities in the country, Atlanta, Georgia, looking for a job with that college degree. Oh, I had job offers. Sales. Like, not legitimate sales. Not saying drugs, but like, not like I'm not selling tractor trailers, you understand. I'm not selling cars. It's like, there's nothing. Nobody was hiring. So I hope that's not the case for you guys 4 years from now. Okay? Negative growth, economic growth for 3/4 of 1 year, there's 4 quarters in a year, constitutes a recession. Wall Street Journal estimated about a 40% chance of recession next year. Next 18 months. Okay? The economy's strong, but we got inflation. That's not good. So what is the government doing right now to combat inflation? Come on, you know the answer. Come on. What is the government doing? They're raising what? Interest rates. Interest rates. Guys, why do we have inflation? Because the government printed money the last 20 years, guys. They've printed so much money. Of course there's going to be inflation. I've been saying it for a decade to my students. At some point, we're going to have inflation. You know what I mean? And here it is. There's one of my predictions finally right. I mean, I guess if you say it long enough, you're going to be right about something, right? But seriously, so you have too much money in circulation. It was too easy to get. And so the value of the currency is dropping. Prices are going up for everything. Not just gas, but everything. For education, it's been happening every year. Okay? Now, I spent the last 2 days with my brother and sister-in-law from Houston. My brother-in-law is a really smart guy. Okay? He got his undergrad at Rice University in engineering, got his MBA at Dartmouth. Went to work for Anderson Consulting, which was a company that went into businesses and turned those businesses around and made them profitable. He did that, worked his butt off for like 15 years doing that. Anderson Consulting was a privately owned company. He became a partner at the age of 40. They went public, which means as a partner, he controlled a large number of shares of stock. The company was renamed as Accenture. Accenture sponsors like huge PGA golf tournaments. They're a huge corporation, and he's a major owner of the stock. He became an instant multimillionaire. Worked for about 3 more years and then retired at like 45. Learned how to fly, bought a plane, flew around North America, South America, Central America, fly fishing. Got bored, and he bought a company in Houston that he manages, a few months out of the year when he's not living in his other place in Colorado. So we were talking last night. He's like a really smart guy. He pays attention like I do to like a lot of events, what's going on. And we were talking about my dad's property and the house and the situation we're in with my stepmom and my sisters and so forth. You guys ever been on Zillow and looked at the value of your house?
Yeah.
Okay. I encourage you to get on there today because you probably remember how much you saw last time you looked at it, right? So I looked at my dad's property, which is on the water in Florida on a bay, beautiful place. Now the house been hit by 2 hurricanes, so the house is not in great shape. About a year ago, I looked at this, maybe a year and a half. and it's Zillow said the property was worth $550,000. Because my wife and I were talking about maybe buying out my sisters and building our dream house one day. So I'm like, okay, so this is gonna be a lot because we still owe money on the mortgage too, 150 grand on that. It's gonna be a lot of money. So anyhow, I pull up Zillow last night and go to the address. Remember, we were at 550 about a year and a half ago. The value today was 391,000. That has changed 20.1% in the last 30 days. Why? I'm like, what the hell? Because I was just talking about it. Yeah, I think it's, probably worth about 500,000 or something like that, And I open up 391 in 30 days. Interest rates. Do you remember how any house in your neighborhood that went for sale sold like that? Yeah? Crazy, right? Cheap money. Mortgage rates over the last couple of years have been like dirt cheap. Like you get a 30-year mortgage for like 3%, 3.5%, which is crazy good. Okay? Today, that interest rate is going up today and tomorrow and the next day. Like every day it's going up. We're over 5% now. So the likelihood of somebody borrowing money to buy a $400,000 or $500,000 property, the likelihood of that happening today versus 6 months ago is a big difference, which means when there's less demand, then the value of the product goes down. And this is not happening just on the Bay in Florida. This is happening across the country. Businesses, this really affects Wall Street. So if you're an investor or you're somebody like me that's working towards retirement like your parents, and you have a nest egg, and every day because of inflation, your nest egg actually shrinks. If your investments are not keeping up with inflation, you're losing money that you've worked for and saved for. Things are going to get worse before they get better. They will get better. What's one way to counteract a recession when we get in one? That's a good one. Cut taxes so people have more money, right, in their pocket. You can create economic activity with that money, right? Or you could, okay, no, print more money, lower interest rates, right? Because then, hey, people will borrow money when it's cheap to borrow money, right? Businesses will borrow money. So Wall Street gets hit hard when interest rate goes up because businesses all over this country that we invest in the stock market, they borrow money all the time. And so the cost of doing business goes up when the interest rate goes up, and that means the stock market's going to take a hit, which means the investments that you and your parents and I have are going to shrink in addition to the inflation. So like my family, your family, is in a much worse situation economically than we were 2 years ago. Today. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay? Just tell me. Now, hopefully you got your plans in order. Okay? And hopefully by the time you guys come out of college, this is way behind us. Okay? Recessions come and they go. Okay? So hopefully you're coming out of college and the economy's starting to grow again. Okay? Sorry, I got off track there. I told you I was getting off track here. I'm not even done yet. Okay, so China. Let's go back to China here, okay? As I think we established, the Chinese don't care about you and I. They don't give a rat's you-know-what about the American people. You understand that? That's why they're producing that fentanyl and sending it across the ocean to Mexico and killing our young people? Think they care? Think it's on purpose? Guys, there are Republicans and Democrats in this country that would sell out the American people for their own personal gain. Both parties. You have retired politicians that will go to work for lobbying for Chinese companies and companies from other countries against the goodwill of the United States to line their own pockets. Let's talk about critical infrastructure. Look at this up here. We talk about these federal agencies. Okay? National Critical Material Council. Critical materials. Now, Elon Musk, like him or hate him, I don't care. Okay? But he makes electric cars, right? And they're pretty good, right? People like them. Where do you get the critical materials for that vehicle? Yeah, Allie.
Quickly.
Are you a doctor?
I'm curing
For
kids
5 minutes.
Oh, okay. We get those from mines in China, right? What kind of mines? Lithium for the batteries, right? Silicone for making conductors, right? Semiconductors and computer chips and all that, right? Critical materials. So we allow ourselves to be subject to what a perceived possible enemy of the United States. Our critical materials. Have any of you guys taken ibuprofen in the last 30 days? Where's ibuprofen made? Where do we import that from? China. Yeah. Guess what? Can they shut that off from us? Yeah. Stockpile. Oh, there's an expiration date on that? I don't care. Listen, guys, we have allowed this to happen. Now, guys, I know I sound like a protectionist, an isolationist, this sort of thing, which generally I don't support. But at the same time, we're putting ourselves in a bad situation, kind of like Germany. They said, we're going to go green. We're going to build windmills and solar farms. And we're going to shut down our nuclear power plants. And in the meantime, while we're getting our solar panels and our windmills ready, we're going to import gas from Russia. With this new pipeline. And then Russia starts a war. Who's going to turn on the heat? In Poland. Who's going to turn on the heat in Germany? They're dependent on Russia for their subsistence. Is this what we should be doing as a nation, people? Are people even aware of it? It's sorry. We got to pay attention to this, guys. Hannah, I get a sense like you're angry with me.
I'm not angry with you. I just panic.
Am I scaring you?
No, I just don't. Yeah.
Am I being xenophobic against the Chinese?
No. You're fine. No.
Okay.
No, you're good.
It's just stressful. You pretty much said we're not gonna find a job.
No.
That's my
Worst
worst
nightmare.
I hope I'm right.
I feel like we're like, oh, I don't know.
Someone give me maybe.
Okay. I got at least 2 people in the last week that have registered to vote in here. Okay, 3. Sorry. 4. Okay. Hey, listen, guys. Huh? Grace Cook. Wow.
Wow. You forgot where you went from.
I forgot a bunch of people's names.
Yeah.
You see, Alan Kirshen, right there. I forgot his name and prompt.
Honestly, so.
Adriana Ramirez still hasn't forgiven me, Grace, like you haven't either.
It wasn't a problem until you just forgot the night where she
Yes, you remember
was
like 200 names like every year.
200, 400, like back to back to back with a bunch that I didn't know, and then somebody walks up and I'm like, oh, I know. Oh God, what? Oh, I'm confused. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
They're like, hey, let's
You
do it.
did great.
I mean,
Let's
you
be
know,
real. You, like,
How many times have I called Anne
Oh.
Notice the hesitation.
her sister's name?
That's why you just call her everyone.
I know, and she likes it.
Exactly. That's what I prefer.
Okay. All right, we got to move on, guys. Listen, we need to. I mean, put me in charge. This is what we're doing. We're going to incentivize American companies to come home. Okay, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do the tax incentives, some type of incentives so that they can compete doing their business here in the United States. And explain it in such a way that, hey, I know they're greedy corporations, but if these greedy corporations come home and pay good salaries to American workers, all of those American workers are going to have a good standard of living. And you know what? They're going to pay taxes too, which is going to increase our tax revenue, even if we cut our taxes on the corporations so they come here instead of going over there. And yes, products are going to be more expensive because it's American labor, but hopefully we'll make more money so we can afford those things. That's what I would do. Free trade is great because you can buy cheap crap, right? It's easy. It works good. But when we start talking about these critical materials, guys, we got to wake up. Okay, now I remember actually debating this in Congress a couple of years ago. Airplane parts for military aircraft. Like, these companies actually wanted to outsource this work to China. Like, so we're in a war with China, and they make the parts for our aircraft, our military aircraft. Is that insanity? It's suicide is what it is. You know what I mean?
Who's the smart ass that thought about it?
Dude, I'm telling you, these politicians, especially the ones that leave office, they lobby for other countries. You understand that? And listen, the NBA, right? We got NBA fans here. NBA. Okay. So you know the thing like with LeBron James and the other guy named Freedom, what's his name? The guy from Turkey. Freedom, what? Do you know this guy? The guy from Turkey? Okay, well he's a Muslim from Turkey. He plays in the NBA. And the Muslims in China, the Uyghurs, right? So he's pissed at LeBron because LeBron will freely come out and criticize his own country. Black Lives Matter, cops suck, just says stuff. You know what I mean? LeBron just says stuff. He doesn't think it through. And don't criticize China because he wants to sell shoes there. They have a huge market. So let's use slave labor of Muslims to make cheap Nike sneakers. And then our NBA players can sell those shoes to a market of 1.3 trillion people that love basketball. Don't say anything. You might piss off the communists. You understand? It's a freaking hypocrite. Okay? Now, ABC owns Disney. ABC owns ESPN. Hollywood makes movies. And if they could sell a bunch of tickets to those movies in China, who cares? We're not going to criticize them. Let's talk about Google. When Google became a thing, right? We had search engines before Google called web crawler. And yes, it was like crawling slowly across the internet. Okay? AOL, America Online, all these, right? Google comes in. Great search engine, right? Great product. Big market in China. So the Chinese government says to Google, hey, would you like to be able to run your search engine in China and get all, close to 1 billion people using your product? If we allow you to do that, what we're going to need you to do is try and help us destroy the human rights of our own people by preventing them from learning the truth about anything, about our government and the things we're doing. Google says, let me think. The principles of freedom, liberty, justice versus hundreds of billions of dollars. Oh, this is an easy one. Sure, we'll help you. We'll help you destroy the liberty of 1 billion people. They don't care. People don't care. I mean, if we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So we might as well do it. Even though we have the best search engine in the world. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm a capitalist. You know what I mean? But you got to have some principles, people. Now, paying attention the last couple of days, Joe Biden has appointed a person to be in charge, is this in the Defense Department, of disinformation in this country. There's a new position created in the United States to limit disinformation.
So the government gets to decide what this is.
You know,
Where have we seen this before?
have you read 1984? The Ministry of Truth is now at hand. Okay, I'm going one more time to China. Excuse me. Okay, listen. Where did COVID-19 come from?
Chinese virus.
Wuhan, China. Now, you said Chinese labs. Now, who funded those labs? The National Institutes of Health, under the direction of Anthony Fauci, funding virus research. Yes, in a laboratory in Wuhan. Now, when this thing broke out of China and spread across the world, killing millions of people, people said this came from a lab. And Fauci got together with his friends. And they said, no. This is a natural occurring virus that came from bats and transmitted to humans. And anybody that says different is spreading disinformation, and you need to take it down. Did that happen? Absolutely, it freaking happened. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google, they all took it down. Now, a year later, faced with hard facts, Fauci admitted that there was a chance that this came from the lab. But we weren't even allowed to discuss it. It was disinformation. If I were a betting man, I'd put a lot more money on the side of that came from that lab than it came from bats transmitting to humans in a wet market in Wuhan. What would you do? Where would you put your money? Seriously, where would you put your money on it? You got two choices. Nope.
Lab outbreak. November of 2019
Okay.
in Louisiana.
Okay.
And then they had military games in China from that facility to the region where Wuhan is.
I'm open to listening to that. I'm not going to shut it down as disinformation. We should allow people to discuss the facts that they know. I can't either. You know who's good at doing that? People in the media that investigate things like that. You know, investigative journalists. No, we don't have watchdogs. We got lapdogs.
I like the coronavirus virus. Like,
Right.
virus has been around.
Right.
Yeah, well, look at how much.
Ebola came to-
The common cold is the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Yes. This virus is different.
Yeah.
Like the way it transmits, like how easily it transmits.
Right.
Easier than a common cold.
Right. That's mutations.
Right. Can you manipulate that in the lab?
Yeah, you could also.
That's called gain of function research. So when you're trying to manipulate a virus to get it to function a different way, to maybe use as a weapon.
Right. I think it definitely could have been engineered in the lab. I'm just saying also, like.
I know, but the fact that they shut it down, that's, you know what I mean? I don't know the truth. I don't know the truth.
Right.
But call me a conspiracy theorist. Do the Chinese care about you? Do they care? Does the Chinese Communist Party care about their own people? Look what they're doing to them right now in Shanghai over this virus. It's horrible. They don't care. Mao didn't care when between 60 and 80 million people died in China over a 40-year span during his rule. He didn't care. There are people, a lot of elites in this world today that think the planet is overpopulated. I showed you that thing, didn't I? That came in the mail that one time?
Yeah.
Yeah. They want to teach this in school. So guys, I know it sounds conspiratorial, excuse me. But guys, and Bill Gates is one of those guys. Okay. He's got a lot of money. You know what the Chinese are doing right now in this country? You know what they're buying? Yeah. Farmland. They're buying farmland in the United States. The Chinese are.
How are they able to do
Yeah,
that?
what?
Well, we can, it was a thing.
What's that court
Really
case?
expensive.
Oh. Is that the
Pink
thing
house.
right now?
Okay.
Oh, London, something new
Isn't
London
it like
is the city.
Keto versus the city of New London.
Yeah.
Good. All right, we got to move on. I'm sorry.
We pulled it back around.
We did. Yeah. Hey, this is a lot of this stuff we've already covered when we did the hats. Okay. So, Commander-in-Chief, Joint Chief of Staff is the person in charge under the president. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, top military officer. Okay. So these are like the heads of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force. Okay. The War Powers Act I talked about yesterday. The president has 60 days. No approval. You got 30 days to bring him home. So essentially 90 days. Legislative power, we talked about this. If the president is popular, he's the chief legislator. He can help drive legislation through. Talked about him, working with members, like talked about the Ted Kennedy case where Bush brought him in, No Child Left Behind. These sorts of wonderful things that we get out of this. Of course, the president can veto, put political pressure, monetary pressure. Sometimes the president can get support from both parties. A lot of this depends on the popularity of support that the president has and who controls Congress, right? Okay. He can call a special session of Congress into session, like say they're home for the summer. He can call them back in an emergency, and he can adjourn them in an emergency. Okay. That's not adorn them. Adjourn. Sorry. Okay. Judicial powers. We need to get through this today. Okay. These are pretty interesting things that you've probably heard of before, like reprieve, commute, pardon, and amnesty. Okay. Yeah, exactly. You're stealing my thunder. Okay. That's all right. It happens all the time. Grace Johnson does it every day. Okay.
Wait, get out.
She's always stealing my thunder. I don't care. Grace knows that. I'm like, Grace, you're stealing my thunder. And Lipinski's the worst. I mean, I'm doing World War II, and Lipinski's like,
He sits in that spot.
Does never shut up.
Is he right up in the front?
Yeah.
yeah, he's close. Yeah. I love Lipinski. Okay, listen. Now, guys, these are for federal cases. So governors have a lot of these same powers within states. Okay? But for federal crimes, say you had, say Biden, and I don't even know where Biden is on the death penalty. But if, say Biden was against the death penalty, there have been somebody convicted of a capital murder, federal crime, and they're about to be executed. Okay? The lawyers for this guy come to the president's administration and say, hey, look, we may have some new evidence here that this person may not be guilty. And so the president says, okay, well, let me look at it. He says, yeah, there's some questions here. So he grants a reprieve, postponing the sentence, the carrying it out. Okay? Pretty simple. Commuting a sentence is reducing it. Okay? Now, let me give you some recent history here, guys. In the 80s and 90s, this country came down hard on crime. Bill Clinton, when he became president, they spent enough money to put 150,000 new police officers on the streets of America. So it wasn't defund the police under this Democrat. It was fund the police. Okay? And you had judges, and sometimes you hear horror stories about this sometimes, guys. Like, you'll have somebody like rapes a child, right? And then you hear like this person's convicted and guilty, and the judge sentences them to 6 months in prison. And you're like, what? Are you kidding me? This is a horrible crime. So state legislature said, you know, a lot of these judges, they're there for life. You can't get rid of them. So they started passing laws like mandatory minimums. So if you commit this type of crime, the minimum amount of time a judge can give you is this. You with me? So in the 80s and 90s, we saw a lot of that. Yeah.
What's the highest minimum? Like, which crime does that make sense?
Yeah, like murder.
Okay.
Right? Like first degree murder, like might be 40 years. Now, some of these laws have gone away subsequently, but some states put in what are called 3 strikes and you're out. You commit 3 felonies, you stay in jail for life. I'm telling you, we went hard on crime, okay? And you know who wound up in you know who wound up in our prisons? A lot of black people. Okay? And then you start to see the pushback from that. Yes? Defund the police. Okay, now, during Obama's last couple of years, he commuted a bunch of sentences. And so did Trump. You got people for long prison terms for marijuana violations of the law. Say you had a couple pounds of pot. You might have got 20 years for that in the 80s. Now, you've done 10 years or something like that. And Obama, they bring this in front of Obama. It's like, well, we got 30 states that are allowing marijuana right now. And you got this person's got 10 more years on their prison sentence for having a couple pounds of marijuana. No, this is wrong. I'm commuting the sentence. Obama did like 2,500 people commuted the sentence. And then Trump did a bunch too. So, guys, this, yeah, I'm probably like you, like violent criminals, those are the ones I want in jail. The non-violent offenders, now they need to pay their debt to society, you know, financial crime, something like that. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you screwed somebody over, you stole something from somebody. You got to pay a debt to society. But a 25-year prison sentence or something like that, I don't know. So we've had a lot of reform in our judicial system lately as a counterbalance to how hard we came down on crime in the 80s and 90s. You follow me? Okay. Obviously, guys, somewhere in the middle, there's a good balance. Yes? And then maybe we reconsider some of these laws, like on marijuana. I mean, I don't know. You know, maybe you reconsider some of these things. Okay? So that's commute. You could see this in a death penalty case for sure. Like, I'm the governor and I'm against the death penalty. and I am commuting all these people on death row to life in prison without parole. That could happen. Okay? A pardon. This is the best thing ever for a criminal. It's a get out of jail free card, and it wipes your record clean. Now, where do you see these pardons? What time of year do you see these pardons? Or when in a presidential term do you see these? Right at the end, when they're lame ducks, right? The election's already taken place, they're leaving office, start pardoning people. Now, the most famous pardon in American history is when Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon of any crimes he may have committed during the Watergate scandal.
He wasn't convicted.
Yep.
You, like,
Stop investigating. You can't convict him of a crime.
you can like pre-pardon someone.
He did that. Now, wait a second. Now, think about this. Okay. Did anybody die? Okay. Was anybody really damaged in this? The guys that broke into the DNC went to jail. Their lives were very much disrupted. Nixon, the only president in American history to ever resign, and did so in disgrace, and would have to live with that the rest of his life. Is that not enough?
It's just that, like, I want to know what the deal is.
Right. Yeah,
I wanted an investigation.
that's fine. That's fine. They did a commission and tried to find as much that you can read in public. It's long. It's like 600 pages. Now, yeah.
I don't want to read a Harry Potter book.
I think I actually have a copy of it in my office. Yeah.
You can look at it.
A little bit. It's Congress, they're writing this investigation. So, okay. Emma mentioned the turkeys.
Yeah.
Okay. Truman was the first president to do this. He pardoned a turkey at Thanksgiving. Okay. 1 year, Bush pardoned 2 turkeys, which means they don't get eaten. They go to the special turkey reserve where they get to live out the rest of their life.
I think the Trump Walt Disney World.
Huh?
I think that. Are you kidding? In Walt Disney World.
Oh, it is? Oh, nice.
That's stupid.
Which has no special exemptions anymore in Florida. Okay. Now. Okay. Okay, pardon. Guys, there have been some really controversial pardons. Okay. You can Google it. Let me give you one. Bill Clinton. Not to pick on Bill. There was this guy named Seth Rich that stole a bunch of money from people on Wall Street. It was like a Ponzi scheme. Okay. He was indicted and fled the country. His wife divorced him, but they were still like tight. But she divorced him because he was on the run. She was one of the biggest donors to the Clinton campaign. And so in the last few days of his presidency, this guy that was on the run living in Europe, Mark Rich, was pardoned by President Clinton. Friend of the family. Okay. That pissed a lot of people off. There's been some really bad people pardoned. Okay. Now, what? Amnesty. Pardon to a large group of people, and you see I have draft dodgers here in parentheses. So during Vietnam, right? If you were 18 or 19 years old and you were not in college, there's a pretty good chance you could get drafted. So some of those young men, like Mr. Lawbaugh, he was drafted. He did as his country ordered him to do, report for duty. And he went. He survived. Over 50,000 didn't. So a lot of the people that got draft notices said, you know what, I'm not going to Vietnam. Now, if you don't show up for duty, you're going to prison. So some of these people fled the country and they went to Canada, most of them. Canada did not agree with our involvement in Vietnam. So they would not extradite these draft dodgers back to the United States to face charges. When Jimmy Carter became president in 1976, he granted amnesty to all those who had dodged the draft. They were allowed to come back to the United States and not face prosecution. Now, this made some people happy. This made a lot of people angry as well, as you can imagine. That divided the country just like the war did. Okay, so a lot of wounds with that war. But another one is when Reagan was president. Reagan granted amnesty, and I forgive me, I don't know how many people it was. I think it was about 2 to 3 million undocumented immigrants that had been in the country past a certain number of years. I think it was like 20 to 25 years, and had not committed any other crimes in the United States besides breaking into our country. Okay, they were given amnesty, okay, forgiveness, and green cards, and allowed to apply for citizenship. Okay, so they could come out of the shadows. Yeah.
Isn't that,
What Obama tried to do.
well, yeah, but also, isn't there something that says, like, if you have been here for so many number of years
And you haven't been caught
and you haven't been
or
caught?
deported, and haven't committed any other crime?
Yeah,
Is there a thing?
yeah, like something
I'm
now.
pretty sure
I
there's a
don't
path
know.
to citizenship for them.
Like 30 years? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I
It's
thought.
hide and
I thought it was
seek,
a
and if you win, you get
You get your
citizenship.
Well, I mean, you're still gonna need to have to apply.
Yeah.
But just like they're not gonna kick you out.
Yeah.
No,
My parents were talking
Gotta
to me
get
about
this
like
beat
the
out.
application for citizenship rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're citizens.
No, it's okay. People don't know. Like Minty, she's not, right? Yeah. She's not, well, she's foreign exchange student.
Oh, is she?
Minty, when?
Oh, and she fresh?
I think she's foreign exchange.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she's going back. She's going back.
Yeah, she goes back.
She's
The one that's dating.
Minty
Yeah,
Fresh.
yeah, Minty
I met Jacob at prom. I had to learn his name. They were the first two in line. And I remember that, Grace Cook.
I remember. You should have just been earlier, Grace. You would have remembered your name.
Yeah.
Do you remember my
Yeah,
name?
before I got like trampled on.
Blaze, he remembered Blaze's name, looked at me and goes,